Welcome to Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another exciting guest on this podcast, like we always do. His name is Chris Barkley, and he's with an entity he calls an Indivisible Party. So welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We're glad to have you, and we look forward to hearing what you have to tell us about politics and about our society. So if we could start by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
Okay. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been a member of science fiction fandom since 1976. So for all you wood calculators out there, that's 48 plus years. I've been involved mainly with helping run science fiction conventions and writing about science fiction fandom for a website called File 770. That's www.file770.com. I'm a daily news editor. I'm also a columnist and a reporter for them. And I won the Hugo Award for Best Fan Writer. That's non-professional writing in the year 2023.
Oh, wow. Wow, excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you say your full-time job is a news editor. So that's interesting. So what's that like? What do you think about that profession?
Well, it's a qualifier. I'm a retired professional bookseller. I worked for Joseph Beth Booksellers in Cincinnati, Ohio between 1993 and 2017.
Okay.
So I retired from that job. The job of news editor is kind of like me going out and finding stories for my editor. His name's Mike Glyer. And he posts them on the website each day. So
okay.
And since I have a lot of free time, I hunt out stories or late-breaking things, such as yesterday it was announced that Samantha Harvey had won the Booker Prize, which is the top literary prize in the United Kingdom, for her novel Orbital, which is kind of science fiction. She doesn't call it science fiction, but others might. So that was the late-breaking story yesterday, and my editor was happy to get the scoop on that.
Oh, good, good. So how has your career experience influenced your political views?
Well, as a younger person, I was drawn to alternatives to the Democratic and Republican parties. Okay. And at first I dabbled in democratic socialism. Got disenchanted with that because some of the folks were so dead serious. They never seemed to want to go out and have fun. So I hung out with libertarians, and I found them very engaging, but I found the philosophy, the libertarian philosophy, especially those who were drawn to Ayn Rand, a bit limiting because it just feeds into people's narcissism and their own self-interest instead of the interest of others. So, being a Star Trek fan, I drifted back towards being a democratic socialist again. Although Star Trek fans, I don't think most of them would call themselves democratic socialists, but that's basically what all these series are espousing, and they're a lot more fun.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. I think you have a good point there, because it's good to be serious about what you do, and it's good to have passion and conviction, and it's good to be focused. Yet you're very limited. It's a very narrow hue of the spectrum of color and life if you don't have any fun in there too.
Exactly.
So you gotta have jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. That's a good way to put it. Okay, so you say the Star Trek people are democratic socialists. So that's where you're staying? That was the camp you're in, and that's where you stayed, or was there any other exploration of ideas?
Well, I should say that I don't think Star Trek fans would mostly call themselves democratic socialists. I would say that they're social liberals, to be sure.
Okay.
As for myself, I've always been in that camp. I mean, I started watching Star Trek in 1966 when it first was on the air. So, but you know, as any person does, they change and evolve over the years, and I find Republican politics where they say government should be limited and should stay out of people's lives. That's all fine and well, but I'm of the opinion that if a government agency is actually working, why mess with it?
Huh. Interesting.
So Richard Nixon, one of our most infamous presidents, who was a Republican, actually founded and supported the Environmental Protection Agency. For what reason? I don't know. But on the most part, it's a government agency that tries to ensure that we have clean air and clean water and a clean environment. And the incoming administration is going to appoint someone who is going to throw out regulations that ensure clean water and clean air and a clean environment. So,
okay,
there we are.
Okay, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Okay, that's okay. I'm mainly affiliated with the Democratic Party because they seem to be adults.
Okay.
For the most part. Some of them are very progressive, and I like them. Some are centrists, and the progressive and more radical people in the Democratic Party don't like centrists because they're not fully invested. It's perceived that they're not fully invested in what they're trying to do. I think that's a bit unfair because I'm a bit of a centrist myself. I try to be practical about it, about my views and my opinions, because it could turn out that my opinion or my view may not be right. But
sure,
I try to be well informed about what's going on, and that's why I created the Indivisible Party Facebook page.
Okay.
Mainly because there has to be some sort of middle ground where people can come together and if they espouse progressive or centrist or even right-wing sorts of views without too much conflict. But I'm finding more and more that the people on the right and those associated with the MAGA movement and then the Trump administration, they're not really interested in compromise. They're only interested in pushing an agenda, I think, that will drive America right into a ditch.
Oh, no, we don't want to be there.
Not especially, no.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so we had the election not too long ago, and we're dealing with it the best we can, and we want to have a light, and we want to be strong and brave, and we want to keep fighting the good fight. And it's a very dark time. So could you please analyze, given your political perspective, the last election, what happened, how this happened, how we chose a guy that the historians on the historian chart said that he's one of the worst presidents, and these seem to be unbiased because they'll say some conservative presidents are good and some liberal presidents are good. So he, given that lack of bias, they chose him as one of the worst on almost every criteria except for public persuasion. So I forget the exact name of the polls, but the public persuasion, he's very good at that. But otherwise, they rank him as terrible leader in a number of ways. So we already had him once, so we don't have an excuse to elect him again. So why did this happen?
Well, there are a number of reasons why this happened. First of all, when the pandemic hit in 2020, America went into kind of an economic tailspin, and we got vaccines out, and although more than 1 million Americans died of the disease, economy itself had a hard time getting revved back up again. But by, I think, late 2022, early 2023, it was actually the economy was getting back on its feet. However, the ensuing problems with supply chains and other natural disasters, that it fostered a lot of inflation. And whether President Biden liked it or not, he was saddled with, he and the Vice President, President Harris, were saddled with a tremendous amount of inflation, like over, I think it was, at one point, it was at 10 or 11%, which means prices shot up.
Yep.
And people are very unhappy. Now, people, at least 74 million of them who voted for Trump, were under the impression that things were actually better under Trump than they were under Biden. I think that's very short-sighted. Okay. The president and the vice president enacted at least 2 big bills, one for infrastructure and another for, I believe it was for chips, like computer chips and other things that will eventually put America back in the forefront of technology and have a great economy. It's just that these things take time and people are impatient. So that was one factor. The second factor was that as much as I love Vice President Harris, she had very short time to get American people on board with her program, and I thought she articulated her economic ideas succinctly and clearly, and she also warned that if President Trump were returned to office, we could possibly be looking at either an autocracy or just out-and-out fascism. But people, and this is the other factor, people were not ready to elect Kamala Harris, a woman of color, to the presidency.
Yeah.
And that you can lay, and she made it a point not to point out that, yes, I want to be your first president, because that would be, to me, and probably to her, very disingenuous, playing her womanhood as a factor in getting her elected. No, she wanted to be elected on the merits of who she was. She, along with Hillary Clinton, were probably 2 of the most qualified women ever to run for president, and they both lost to a serial liar, a sexist, a liar, and possibly a national security risk.
Ugh.
So that leads into the third factor. The Democratic Party's reliance on Latino vote. For decades, they were taken for granted, and pollsters and other political analysts came to the conclusion that no, the Latino vote isn't a monolith, and it shouldn't have been treated that way, because there are a lot of Latinos who are very devout, some of whom who come to America, become citizens, and have their own vested interests. Now, these vested interests don't include migrants from other countries coming here, unfortunately. And I must say that while Latino women were about half the Latino women did vote for Kamala Harris, a tremendous number of Latino men did not. And those, along with a couple of other demographics like white men who are not college educated and other ethnic demographics, they just did not want to vote for Kamala Harris. They wanted to go for some known quantity, even though he is a convicted criminal.
Yeah.
So
here's a question, because we're talking about demographics. How do they determine the demographics of voters? Because is it based on registration? Do they look at registration? Can you see by registration who voted for who, or how do they determine?
They mainly do it by polling, either polling before the election, polling people as they come out from voting, and polling afterwards, either by phone or in person or on computers. I've participated in several polls conducted online. So all this information is being collected all the time. I wouldn't be surprised if someone's handicapping the 2028 election right now, even as we speak.
So you're assuming there's going to be a 2028 election.
Well, look at how many people voted for Donald Trump. Someone pointed this out the other day, that 74 million plus people voted for Donald Trump this time. And that was approximately the same total of people who voted for him in 2020. Donald Trump won the popular vote this time, but not by very many points, like 2 or 3 points. So we're not talking about a red wave. The only red wave you can see is on the electoral map, but the population is practically split culturally, politically, and socially.
Okay.
So if the president, I put the word president in quotes, enacts all the things he wants, mass deportations, political revenge on his enemies, and this insane tariff plan, you're going to see people flip back to the Democratic Party in 2 years when the midterm elections occur. And the Democrats will take back the House. Practically no chance of getting the Senate back. That would be a miracle. But if people wake up and realize what a shit show we're undergoing, things could turn around. And there will be an election in 2028. It's just putting in stopgaps to stop some of the things that Trump and his cronies want to enact that are going to be very harmful to this country.
Okay. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So one thing I find interesting is, although there's a lot of talk about him and the Christian nationalists coming to power, one of his big backers is not a Christian; it's an agnostic, and his vice president's wife is a Hindu. So it's interesting how that works. So it seems some would say that Donald Trump himself is not very ideological. Would you agree with that?
I think he's transactional. Like, you scratch my back, I'm going to scratch your back. You do something for me, I'm going to do something for you, which is how he's blundered. And I'm using that word, not using that word lightly, blundered his way throughout his life, throughout his business dealings and his political dealings. That's the only explanation for him having tons of classified documents in his residence in Florida and even in his bathroom. He was going to be trading secrets with someone at some point. He claimed they're his, but no, they belong to the National Archives, and some of that stuff was really sensitive stuff. Like, I don't even want to know what he had stashed away in his bathroom.
Oh, sure.
But the fact that he chose, frankly, a smooth-talking misogynist like J.D. Vance, who was our junior senator from Ohio before he was chosen, it's just he likes people who are loyal to him and had the same views as he does. And J.D. Vance fits that to a T.
Okay.
And the other choices he's made for his cabinet, Marco Rubio, he's been a United States senator for 8 to 10 years. I have no doubt that he has some foreign State Department-like experience dealing with people from other countries. But is he a Secretary of State? I don't know. I don't know if he's going to fit the bill. I don't know if the Fox host that he picked for the Secretary of Defense, yeah, he's a combat veteran with 2 Bronze Stars. But can he handle the 3 or 4 million people who are in the armed forces? Can he handle not only muster morale for the entire armed forces, but can he handle the bureaucracy?
Yeah.
These are unknown factors. And Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, I'm sorry, that is not going to fly. And there are senators who have already stated they're not going to vote for Matt Gaetz, who is under investigation for, I'll say loud pedophilia and other sorts of misconduct as the Attorney General of the United States. I don't think so.
What does Trump like about him?
Beg pardon?
What does Trump like about Matt?
Well, there's a House investigation into some of that activities, and since he was named to be Attorney General, he immediately resigned from that House seat he had just won. And the rules state that if you're not a member of the House, no report is going to come out. So any allegations or anything involving any shady involvement that he has had will not be released, not legally, and not to the public until some enterprising reporter or reporters get their hands on the report. And I guarantee there are reporters out there who are trying to get a hold of this report so they can actually put into the public arena exactly the allegations against Matt Gaetz.
Okay.
So.
Huh. Okay. So, okay, the Senate is in the Republican hands. So do you think they're going to confirm all of Trump's appointments?
No.
So they're gonna go against him, you think?
Well, John Thune, who is a senator from South Dakota.
Yep.
Yeah. He was elected the Senate Majority Leader. He is more of a traditional Republican. He's gone along with some of the things that Trump has wanted to do. But I find that an establishment figure like himself will not go along with Matt Gaetz for Attorney General for the reasons I stated earlier.
Okay.
Susan Collins in Maine, she's not on board with that either. I don't think he'll get most of his appointments, to be sure, but not all of them.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
Yeah.
So what do you think is his logic for appointing that Fox guy?
You mean Matt Gaetz?
No, the Fox for the Secretary of Defense.
His name escapes me. He just wants someone who's been loyal to him, and as someone who's been on Fox News for 14 years, well, yeah, he's going to be more or less on board with Trump's agenda, whatever that might be. Trump wants loyalty. He wants fealty. He doesn't want anyone. He's going to say, Mr. Secretary, jump 3 feet in the air, and he'll jump 3 feet in the air.
Okay.
Loyalty and transactionism. That's what Trump wants.
Okay.
And why half the population voting thought that was a good idea, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what our country is thinking. It was a bad choice, and like I said, we had it it's not like he was an unknown. We already had him in office before. So maybe the first time we could blame people for, because a lot of people like to say we would need a business person in office. So that theory was thrown out of the water.
Well, I've heard people on various news outlets say that, yeah, I still want a businessman and he's not a politician. Yeah, you want a businessman, you're going to get one, but he's not a very good one. How do you bankrupt a casino? He bankrupted a casino, and he's had several other bankruptcies on top of that. I mean, is that his goal? People like that, narcissistic people who get into positions of power never see themselves as a villain. They see themselves as, I'm looking out for myself. And if there's any ancillary good stuff that happens, fine. But I'm mainly doing this for myself. He's doing it he's going to line his pockets. He's going to suck up more arena shows where people will come and cheer him.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It's very frustrating, but that's what democracy is. Democracy is messy. Sometimes we make wrong choices, like Warren Harding or Andrew Jackson, Richard Nixon. We're going to make, and if democracy is going to survive, people have to rise up. They'll have to vote, or in the case of 1960s, actually hit the streets.
Oh my!
And let me tell you, living through the riots of the 1960s, the civil insurrections, the riots, and there was a lot more terrorism in the United States between 1965 and 1985 than people remember.
Huh.
I mean, Puerto Rican nationalists stage bombing on a regular basis. Radicals like the SLA, they kidnapped heiress Patty Hearst and forced her to help them rob a bank. And that didn't turn out well either. Not for them, and certainly not for Patty Hearst.
Yeah.
So, and frankly, I'm frightened by Christian nationalism, where they say that God has chosen Trump and America to spread Christianity all over the world. That's not going to happen. That should not happen. That's not what democracy is for. Democracy is not only to help protect your religious rights, but protect others from religious rights, or being indoctrinated in religions.
Yes.
At least that's what it's supposed. The Constitution was supposed to ensure.
Yes. Music to my ears. That's what I'm all about. So separation of state and church, and also freedom of religion. So yeah, you hit on a great point. So do you think they're going to get their agenda, these Christian nationalists, or do you think people are going to resist it?
People are going to resist.
Will they be able to resist enough to stop it?
Oh God, I hope so. If you'll pardon the pun there. Anyway, no, I think there are enough people in this country who will stand up and say no. I mean, recently there was a reversal in Louisiana. A federal judge threw out a law signed by the governor saying that every schoolroom must have a copy of the Ten Commandments. That's clearly a violation of the separation between church and state. So, I don't know. Strong judges who will adhere to the Constitution, and strong people who will file lawsuits or go demonstrate, they will amply resist any radical changes to the progress America has made. I mean, if you look back to when I was born in the middle of the Eisenhower administration.
Oh, wow.
In the middle of the Eisenhower administration, there was still apartheid, Jim Crow laws prohibiting black people from voting or running businesses. And we've come a long way since 1956, and there are people out there now who want to dial all that back. They think that the era of the Donna Reed show and Father Knows Best was America at its finest, where only white people were in charge and they knew what was best. Well, I and Beyonce and a lot of other people would say, no, we can't revert back to that America. That would be disastrous.
Yes, it would. So, also pardon the pun, you have faith in the Constitution. The Constitution will withstand this dark period in American history?
I hope so. People are contemplating, even now, just moving out of America because they can't stand Trump, and they certainly won't be able to stand anything that J.D. Vance has in mind if he runs and wins in 2028. And they just want to get out now. I have no intention of abandoning my country until the Constitution's shredded. And once that's done, there is no country left for me to love.
Oh, wow.
I've, on occasion, have been asked to swear an allegiance to the Constitution. And I take that very seriously. It separates us from some of the worst other forms of government. Winston Churchill once said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all the other forms. It's always been fragile. And now we're finding out how fragile it is. When people believe in something or someone who is just leading half the population astray, there's going to be trouble. And I hope there isn't another civil war, because this civil war will encompass all 50 states and all the territories. Because there are people on both sides who believe they are right in trying to establish a Christian theological nation, something like Handmaid's Tale. We cannot let that happen. If it does, I'm just going to say I tried as hard as I could to prevent that.
Yes. You'll be able to say you fought the good fight.
Yep, and it better be a good fight.
Yep. Wow. Okay, so we have hope. It's a dark time. It's a test of our nation right now. Our nation.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Empire Strikes Back. Well, we have to make sure the return of the Jedi takes place.
Yes.
And that's happened before. It's happened before.
Exactly, yep. Our nation has a history of going through these difficult periods and coming out stronger. So it's possible.
Yeah, if you look back through our nation's history, there were the events leading up to the Civil War, and Abraham Lincoln saw us through that until his life was taken. His vice president, Andrew Johnson, down there with Trump being one of the worst presidents, and the country survived Andrew Johnson. And the country survives Warren Harding and Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. So, there is always hope that America will pick itself up, get out of the ditch, dust itself off, and head on down that road again.
Great. That's a good place for us to end, because we want to end on a high note.
Oh, yes.
So Chris, how can our audience support you in your efforts? You mentioned that website that you're an editor for. Would you like people to come there?
Sure. As I said, I write for my editor. His name is Michael Iyer, and the website is file770.com. That's www.file770.com. It's a daily.
I'm sorry, can you get that again? File?
Yes, FILE770.com.
Oh, great. Okay.
And as for generally speaking, support civil rights, join the ACLU, and support Democrats who are on board with protecting people, not property.
Sure.
That's what I was going to say. If you're part of the Green Party, please stop running for president. Start running for school boards, city councils, and then work your way up to state representatives and governors and senators. Don't just run for president. If Jill Stein, by some miracle, had won the presidency, she couldn't get anything done because she has no support. If the Green Party wants to be serious as a serious third party, work from the bottom up, not from the top bottom.
Okay. That's a good strategy. A lot of people we've talked on the podcast recommend that strategy, so that's a good strategy.
I mean, if the Green Party were really serious about starting down at local levels, I would support that because the Democrats and the Republicans need competition. Not going to be easy because they don't like third parties on ballots, but that's the fight that's the future fight that needs to be done. There need to be other political parties to compete with the Democrats and the Republicans.
Great. That's a good view, Chris. We thank you for sharing that. We thank you for talking about these deep, dark, yet important topics that we need to talk about. So we appreciate your presence on this podcast today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
I wish you all the best and take care.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.